Good afternoon, good people. You are here in the studio with Calvin Mann. I am the temporary Calvin Mann as we commence the takeover for these next 2 additional Mondays, including today. But we are here because we have some women from the safety nets, some power people, power playing, power women in the house today. And we are talking about the women's safety net, but we are focusing today on being safe behind the mask. And you're going to learn more about what we mean by safe behind the mask. We're going to give you 3 different perspectives to look at for being safe behind the mask. The first one is your personal safety with our sister Rochelle Morton. We have financial safety with our sister Crystal Gunn. And we also have spiritual safety with your own host here, Heather Heteru, perpetrating Calvin Mann today. So leading this discussion and trying to facilitate this conversation, we're going to do our best to share our insights, our wisdom, and our experience with you today so that we can make sure that what's really behind the mask is truly safety and not false, right?
Right.
All right. So how we came up with the idea around the women's safety net is because we started to think about what do women in this time and this season need. We need to be able to have some strategies, some tools to make sure that what we're doing, 1, that we're on the right path, and 2, that we have this interconnected source that we can support each other so that we all have a sense of safety. We all have a sense of security, but we all have a sense of purpose because everybody has their place. And so we know that women tend to be anchors in our homes, on the job, in the community. And so there are a lot of us trying to do something positive and constructive. Where we often misplace our efforts is that we try to do it alone. We try to do it individually. We try to do it independently. And we know that the collective we, meaning all of us working together, are stronger as a net than we are individually. So each net has its own square, its own anchor, its own support. And what we are doing today and what we do in our work and our workshops moving forward is to make sure that each space in that net is filled by a resource, a woman, a sisterhood, a network, someone working together that is holding you together and holding you up. And so that's how we see this idea of a safety net. So we're going to have a couple of opening thoughts from the sisters in the studio. We're going to ask Rochelle if she'll start with just some thoughts around personal safety. And again, we're talking about being safe behind the mask. So the mask is also sometimes a place where we hide our insecurity. We hide the different things that we're trying to work on, but we don't want to reveal to someone else for lack of judgment, for not feeling unsupported or feeling judged, right? So we don't want to feel those things. So we tend to hide behind a facade and we think that that space is safe, but that's the most dangerous place to be, is alone and isolated and not having the support that you need. So we're going to talk about how in our personal safety, we need to feel supported and have this safety net, but also where we hide sometimes behind that. Rochelle, you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, thank you, Heather, for having me and to be able to share with everyone, some things that are very concerning when it comes to the masks that we wear on a daily basis. Mm-hmm. We tend to put the mask on and think that, what we're displaying is exactly what we want people to see, but we all have, what's behind that mask, and a lot of times that is fear. And concern. If you've been through anything in life, you tend to some things you just don't want to expose. Right. And so you put that mask on to hide, that truth that really is going to stay with you forever. Right. And when you become, at least if you try to become vulnerable and, let people know kind of what you're going through and how they can better support you, when that helps to increase your sense of security and safety. Yes. Because then you have what you talked about before, that sisterhood, that net that you need in order to keep you from falling, and so that you're able to walk on that water when you're walking with God instead of sinking.
Yes.
And so I am looking forward to sharing, different mindsets that you need to have, as you're going throughout your day and making sure that you're situationally aware and that you're equipped, empowered, and educated to be able to protect yourself.
Thank you. Awesome. All right, Sister Crystal.
Hello. It's interesting that Rochelle just said there's some things you don't want to expose. And I find that a lot with people when it comes to their finances, right? Because we live in this world that says you have to wear this, drive this, look a certain way, have a certain thing, right? And then people are trying to live up to those expectations that sometimes financially they can't live up to. And it leaves them in a bad financial situation. Or you just have the hardships that happen in life, medical issues, death, some other sort, you got laid off or whatever. We saw a lot of that happening with the pandemic. And then it's those things, and we hide them, and we don't want to go ask for the help. We don't want to build that team because of the embarrassment, and I always say when you start to speak that truth, you'll find that truth is very similar for a bunch of other people. And so you need to come back and build that team that can help you get past that. And like you said, we can't do it alone, although we try. We need to not do it alone, but find those people that can help us. Because when you continue to try to do it alone and you don't have the tools and the knowledge to get you out of the situation, you wind up in a lot of instances digging a bigger hole for yourself.
Yes.
That, could have been prevented had you asked for help.
Thank you. And I'd like to cover where we are sometimes in our spiritual safety. And when I speak of spiritual safety, I'm not just talking about your faith walk, although that's a huge component of it, because it's something that we need, because without faith, right, you have a difficulty being able to see the future, anticipate the future, work toward the future, because you don't see it happening. And just because you don't see it happening doesn't mean it's not happening.
True.
And that's a place, I think, where we struggle a lot, where we've prayed, we've done all we could do for prayer, right? We've done all that we feel that we could do in our actions. We've done all we thought that we could do in our words, but still we're not manifesting. And so really what that is that there's still some things that have to be in place. One, if you find yourself in doubt, that means you need to strengthen that muscle. That means you need to strengthen that faith muscle. And sometimes that faith muscle is strengthened when you have others who are believing with you, holding that intention for you. That's really important. When we talk about this safety net and what's behind it, there is a saying that says, what is it, behind every good man is a strong woman? Mm-hmm. Well, when we talk about behind the mask, that's often who's behind the mask. Where is your strength coming from? What are you believing for? What are you striving for? What are you working for? All of those things have a spiritual resonance to them. And what I mean by that is there is some things that you have to do in your thoughts. There's some things you have to do in your words, and there's some things you have to do in your deeds and your actions. That is the process of manifesting. Just thinking about it doesn't bring it to pass. Just talking about it doesn't bring it to pass. But it's the combination of the actions that you take. The inactions are delayed. So I'm going to give you an insight that's going to liberate you completely. Okay. Are you ready for this?
I am.
This insight is that you can't do it wrong. You can do it the long and hard way, or you can do it the way of ease. I didn't say easy. I said the way of ease, the way that you were intended to walk. So when you're not listening and your inner self is so cluttered and full with other issues and things and other past hurts and other things that you don't need to that no longer serve you, right? If it no longer serves you, it should not be in your path, and it certainly shouldn't be in your purse. It should not be in that backpack that you're carrying every day. Like when you leaving home, you're loading up all your issues, you're loading up all your hurts, you're loading up all your pain, and by the time you put that in your purse or in a backpack, you are already 25 pounds heavier. So that means you're going to be tired faster.
Right.
That means that you're going to be irritated and annoyed with people more. That means that because you're carrying a weight that's not yours to carry. So if you're thinking that you've done it all wrong, I messed everything up, no, you just went the long way. It doesn't mean that your reset is not the very next day. Take your next step as your reset. You can change your mind. You can change your outcome. You can be liberated from your past. There are some things that you should reflect on, but they're not things that you should be looking back into. The answer is not behind you. We have the rear view mirror for a reason in our cars, right? If we drove looking backward, you think Southfield is bad this time of day. Can you imagine? No, so it just is for a glimpse of what's behind you, not for you to turn and go back into anything. Your emotion is always forward. Your peace, your liberation, all of that is ahead of you, and you can hit the reset button. You can choose tomorrow to change your mind, to change your attitude. And those things that hold you in bondage, one big one is unforgiveness. Unforgiveness will hold you in bondage because it not only impedes the space in your mind and in your thoughts, but also that space in your heart. So if you want to love or want to be loved, if you have that bondage holding your heart captive, there's nothing that can get in. There's nobody that can get in because now you're not safe.
And sometimes that forgiveness starts with you forgiving you.
Absolutely. In all of these areas.
Yes.
In all of these areas,
yeah.
whether you felt like you've been a victim and you put yourself in a bad situation, right? We've had that feeling before. I knew I shouldn't have done it, but I did it anyway. I felt like that wasn't the right direction. I felt like somebody was watching me. All of those things, this is another mask that we hide behind. It's that thing that prevents us from being our real selves and recognizing our real self.
And that is so true for all of us.
Yes, absolutely.
If we are honest with ourselves, when we look in the mirror, we absolutely know that what you just said is true for each and every one of us. We've all been in situations where it's a difficult situation that we should not have been in, but we're in it. We found ourselves in it, and we actually found our way out of it. You know, and so that's where that forgiveness comes. When you have found your way out of it, you need to thank the Heavenly Father first for protecting you, and then you just need to ultimately be prepared to share. And share that lesson that you learned. And, you know, and there are other that will help other women to open up and feel that they can share too, and that they're not alone, because your mistake is not the only mistake that has ever been made. It's been repeated for generations,
right?
And you know, so
that's important, Crystal. So how do you see that some of these, and I'm going to call them missed MISSED steps, and not missed takes, right? So missteps. How do we misstep financially, where we tend to, you know, hide behind the facade of I'm all right. How about that? I'm all right.
Well, because
I'm good. There it is.
Because we use that one a lot. Oh,
yes,
no, I'm good. Society says you have to, again, look a certain way. You have to be a certain way. You have to have this thing in order for people to perceive you as being successful, and we get so caught up in that. And I think that's the biggest, what did you say, misstep? Because you have to live your own reality, right? You have to live your finances is different from someone else's finances, right? And let's be real. We aren't taught that, right? And we know that there's this wealth gap, right? And it's just getting wider. It's not getting smaller. And we know that part of that wealth gap, or the reason for that wealth gap, is we don't get equal pay, right? We just don't get equal pay. However, And I saw something earlier where someone said, financial literacy is not going to close the wealth gap. That's true. Financial literacy itself will not close the wealth gap. We need people fighting for fair wages, right? And so those elected officials that we have in office need to be fighting for those fair wages. However, financial literacy and financial empowerment are still very important, right? Because while you're going through whatever it is that you're going through, while we're waiting for that equal pay, you still need to know how to operate your own finances. And you still have to know how to correct and define your financial relationship, right? Because in 9.9 times out of 10, your financial relationship was created by someone else.
Wow. Talk about that. Talk about that.
So you'll hear people say, oh, I bank at such and such because my parents always banked there, right? And so you haven't explored yourself the benefits of you banking there. And maybe you should or should not based on your own personal scenario, right? Or what you heard always growing up, right? Money doesn't fall from trees. You got to work hard for the money. Or you watch your parents work from sun up to after sundown. And so you're doing the same thing, right? And you don't understand, you're not even thinking, okay, well, why am I working so hard and so many hours? It's because that's what you saw. So someone else defined that for you. You didn't define it for yourself, right? And then everything that you see on TV, on social media, everyone's trying to get your money out of your pocket. Again, you have to wear this designer, that. You have to drive this, that, or the other. And I'm not saying you shouldn't have any of that, but if you're doing that and your light bill is past due, right? There's something wrong with your financial relationship, right? And so you have to then go back and say, I have to redefine my financial relationship to work for my goals, my dreams, and where I am right now.
Can you? I want to step back a minute because I think we say that, and on the surface, we know that that's so true. But how do you shift from okay, my light bill, I can wait another month before they cut off my light bill. But I can't wait another month for my car note because I need this to floss, correct, right? Or I need this or I need this because this is part of what I need, the persona I need to display for my business, for people to think that I'm at this level, right, to get this kind of customer. So this may be more important to me, than struggling in the places where people don't see, right? Mm-hmm. Because we're talking about safe behind the mask. Mm-hmm. I have this nice, beautiful, big, red, shiny, whatever this is, right?
Right.
But I'm struggling over here. But I'm using this as a stepping stone. Do you see that a lot as a financial strategist?
Yes. And you have to. So
how do you navigate a situation like that?
We have to peel back the layers.
Okay.
Right. So it's not just about these numbers. Why is this big red shiny thing so important to you? Mm-hmm. Right. What is it about you that you feel like you won't be accepted without this big red shiny thing, right, or whatever that is, right? And or why do you feel like these things are more important than those? So yeah, we're going to talk about the numbers and put you on a strategy in order to get you there. But it's a mental picture too, right? So when we talk about that wealth gap and we, earn 65% to 65% of whatever the Hispanic male is earning. Okay. Even if we close that, if we don't address your relationship with your finances, your spending habits, why you do what you do and how you do it, it doesn't matter if you walked into work tomorrow and that gap was closed. You're still going to have the same financial relationship. You're still going to have the same financial struggles because you haven't had the psychological shift. You haven't realized that you have to do something different, right? Most people don't know why they operate the way that they operate financially. And until you uncover that, you can't really change it, right? So, there's this whole debate about, and Rochelle has probably seen it. Heather may not have seen it yet because it's been on social media. But it was like dinner with Jay-Z for like $500,000 or something like that, right? And so you can sit in front of the most successful people in the world, and Miles is over here nodding his head. But Miles can give you the blueprint on how to create, a successful podcast station. But if you don't have the value in yourself, if you don't see that for you, if you don't think that you're worthy, yeah, I can tell you how to make six figures. I can give you a blueprint on how to do that. But if you don't think you're worthy of making six figures, you can have 15 blueprints and it's still not going to happen. So part of that strategy, again, is not just the numbers and fixing the credit, but it's also going back and digging and unlearning those bad things, and then you being able to see the value in you, so that if then you had this blueprint, okay, well, wow, I am worthy of that. I can, you can see it, as you said, then it becomes a whole lot easier, right? So it's that psychological shift that has to happen. And that's, again, peeling back those layers and understanding why you even operate the way that you operate with your finances.
Thank you for that. That's awesome. I mean, because we see it in our circles a lot, but the question is, where do you begin? And it is a very sensitive space,
and
because
why?
Because we don't want people to see us as, the bottom line is weak.
Yeah.
You don't want to be perceived as weak. Mm-hmm. When you look at your finances, if it's not where you think puts you at the same station, right? Or even if it's not, it's an illusion, but keeps you at the same station as the people in your circle, you feel some kind of way about your own value.
But the crazy part of that is, there are other people in your circle
Absolutely. I'm
that are
going
right there
to say
where
it,
you
but
are,
you beat me
right? And you think that they're somewhere different, and they're not. They're probably worse off than you in some instances, but we have this thing where we don't want to talk about the very thing that we need to talk about.
Right. And I think that's a great opportunity to have girls' nights, to have support groups, to have sister circles, all of those things. And then that's one thing I have to just say that I love about the Business Shower Network, because it's not just talking about what you don't have and what you haven't done. It's partnerships in there. It's education components in there. It's people in there that you can actually go to and ask the questions. That's the value of having a safety net, right? BSN is a safety net for new and seasoned business.
Yes.
It's a safety net. So, Rochelle, I want to talk to you about this, though. If you can talk about, so all of these wonderful things that we have, right? How do we protect them? How do we protect ourselves? So if you can start with, I know we had talked about looking at the communities that we think are so safe because you're out in a different zip code, right? You think you're safe because your kids go to this type of school, or you have separated yourself from the heart of where the most urban, I'm trying to think of a nice place to say, the urban influence, right, in your surrounding. You think you're far enough removed from that, whether it's education, whether it's zip code, whether it's income. How do we, where's the level fields? Can you start there? What's the level that we're all on, that no matter where you are, you still have to be situationally aware?
So one of the things that I want to really bring to the attention of everybody, especially those who think, like you said, that they live in a safe area, their children go to a safe school. The criminals,
she said,
they love safe places because they think that nobody's paying attention. They are under the radar because it's a safe place. And so nobody's really looking. If you live out in the country somewhere, nobody's, going to be, out there, and so that's where a criminal can go and break into a home, and, the law enforcement officials have miles to travel in order to get to that home. But that's prime for them. They've been looking at that property for a long time. And so we have to be ready. We have to be prepared. Not scared, but prepared in the event of any type of emergency. And, I'll talk about the whole statistic of, the 26 seconds, which is a violent crime, not just a crime, but a violent one happens every 26 seconds. So knowing that, don't think that you are somehow protected from that if you aren't situationally aware and you're not paying attention to someone that may be lurking in the bushes of your safe home that knew what time you were coming and going. They've been watching your patterns for quite a bit of time, and this is their opportunity to now take some of those wonderful things that you talked about that you've accumulated, your car, the jewelry and all the other things that you have, the nice purse and things like that you take,
or your person.
Yeah,
your personal.
Absolutely.
Right.
And true criminal cares nothing about your life. They're after what they're after, whether you live or die. So you have to be prepared to defend yourself and your family, because when we actually take that mask off, that's what we're concerned about. Is if we're not concerned about ourselves, we're concerned about the safety of our children, the safety of our elderly parents, our relatives, our loved ones.
Yes.
And so we have to pay attention to what some of the things are that could happen and be prepared to defend ourselves for that, because our lives are worth the fight.
Okay.
So
I like that. I'm gonna fight. So, do you think? Right. Do you think that's a decision that you should be prepared to make every day?
I do. You have to have the mindset that I am going to make the best of this day, and I'm going to live to tell about it.
Ooh,
that's a good one.
Ooh,
That's
I mean,
a good one.
yes.
I mean, because we hear on Facebook and social media all the wonderful, glowing stories that people want to share about, all the wonderful things that have happened to them. Notwithstanding what is happening behind the closed door when you're on your knees crying.
Right.
Because, like we talked about before, the women in your circle look like they have got it going on. And you want to look like them. But at the end of the day, when you go home, you know what you're facing.
Right.
And you
they
go
do
home,
too.
and they do too. But nobody wants to
they
have...
feel what they're facing
Absolutely.
themselves. Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Absolutely. Nobody wants to have that conversation. But when you do have it, it makes you so much stronger as a person.
Yeah.
Because you've confronted that Goliath. You've confronted that, and you're able to fight back and be real, because putting on a facade takes a whole lot of energy.
Yes,
there's not enough makeup in the world, to be able to keep that up for very long. And at some point, you do have to look in that mirror and recognize, what your weaknesses are and what your strengths are, because we can focus on our weaknesses all day long. But once you start to really think about how strong you really are, then you are strong. And you can overcome those weaknesses.
Awesome.
It's interesting that you just said that, the weaknesses and the strengths. I was having a conversation with Yvette yesterday, and she talked about that very thing, and she's writing this book about her mother, but what she thought about growing up that she thought was weaknesses in her mother, which now in her very adult life, she learns that they all weren't weaknesses. Some of them were strengths, and we just deem them or see them as weaknesses because we really don't understand what that person is going through because they have on that mask.
Yes.
Right. So,
Yes.
Heather, you do this whole removing the mask workshop, which is beyond awesome and incredible. But
Thank you.
and in each one of these scenarios that we're talking about, personal, financial, spiritual, right? In order to heal, in order to grow, in order to move forward, we ultimately have to remove the mask. But people are terrified of removing the mask for everybody has their own list of reasons. Like,
Right.
and to remove the mask in one is to remove the mask in another. But like, what are some steps that get you, okay, what do I need to do first in order to even...
God. Yes, yes.
It's the healing.
Right.
That
So
healing.
So I think there are a couple of things that are really important. So I'm going to start with my basics, right? The first thing is that you have to be able to embrace change. And being able to embrace change means that you have to set your mind to embracing change. I have had enough. I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. That's where it starts. Because at that point, then you're like, okay, I'm ready to hear. I'm ready to do. I am at my wit's end. All my resources, my information, my tools have been exhausted. So sometimes we have to get to that place. Not everybody has to get there before they change. But that is where most people go before they're able to do it. And there's some reasons behind that too. But first, the steps of change is that you have to have new information. New information. You also have to be able to appreciate the information that you have. So it's one thing to have something that's like, oh, well, that's new. That's interesting. That's not appreciating it. It's like, yeah, I can do that. That's when you're appreciating new information. I can do that. The second step is to actually apply that information. So if you don't plan to go back into something that you've been delivered from, or that you've run from, or you have let go, if you are prepared for that next step, then now you have to do your planning. Put it in place, right? That next step, whatever that next piece of information that resonated with you, that was your aha moment, now you have to apply that to your life. The next thing that's going to happen is you're going to see your situation transform. You're going to transform, and the clues that you're transforming is you're going to hear people say, wow, you seem different. You seem happy. You seem, right? And so that question is going to go on and on. You're like, okay, so I am transforming because it's not just on the inside anymore. It's on the outside where it's visible. But the last step of that is that now you elevate beyond. This is where that testimony you were talking about, living to tell the story, that's where that space is. When you've elevated, then you have information to share. This is what I did to get here. Mm-hmm. This is my on the other side of through. That's important. But now this is the harder part. That it takes 10 to 21 days to form a new habit. This is where that faith that we were talking about comes in. You have to believe and hold the intention long enough for your mindset to change. Change is a biochemical process. It's not just saying it. It's not just doing it. It's the whole manifestation process. So that's the thought, the word, and the deed, holding that intention for the first 10 to 21 days. Can we do that, right? If you say, okay, well, you know what? I am going to be celibate. Can you get past that first 21 days? Because now you're saying this, you're having to say this every day, right? You have to tell yourself that. You have to speak it. No is my answer. Thank you, but no, right? You have to speak that. And then you have to do something about it. So you have to remove yourself from that situation or that circumstance or that temptation, whatever it might be. Maybe you're watching social media and you're seeing these things that are drawing that and stirring that up in you. So you might need to withdraw from that. And you have to hold that intention for 10 to 21 days. It doesn't become a lifestyle change until you've done it for 63 days. That's 3 consecutive 21-day cycles. So, I mean, but that's the reality of it. A lot of us can't hold the intention for long enough to manifest things.
We live in this microwave society, though, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And this, 30-second, 60-second sound bites of life. We live in that, and it's how do you step out of that and say, oh wait, I gotta hold this intention for 10 days. They didn't get past 10 minutes, so it's
because you haven't found. So these are the ways that we get to our limit. Mm-hmm. It is a trigger.
Yep.
Right? Something triggered that, like, I don't want to be like my mother was in this area, right? That might be a trigger. I'm not going to live this way anymore. I'm not going to let my children see me live this way anymore. I want them to see what happy looks like, not with this thing I'm living, right? So it has to be some kind of trigger that sets that off. You have to be inspired. And then that inspiration shifts to motivation. So when you reach somebody, you hear Eric Thomas, you hear all these motivational speakers, right? Les Brown, they're all getting you all hyped up. Yeah, you can be motivated, you can be inspired and motivated, but what do you do then? Mm-hmm. You still have to go back to that new information because now you got to appreciate and value what you heard, somebody's journey and how they're sharing that with you, and now you have to apply. I mean, so it goes back to that. The other thing that will cause us to make those changes is consequences. If I don't pay that light bill, whether it's a month or 2 months behind, if I don't pay it, ultimately it's going to get turned off. That's a consequence. So,
yeah, but I see people bang their head on that one consequence over and over again.
but until they get to that point where they're able to hold that intention, not again, never again, until they get to that point, see, that's not their trigger. That's just a consequence, and they're okay with the consequence. So they need more than just a consequence. They need the motivation, they need the inspiration, they need the triggers.
And sometimes that trigger has to be something that you really and truly care about, right? So if John can or can go call his mom and she's gonna write that check to keep those light bills from coming out, but next week you're in Vegas, right? It's like, how you in Vegas and somebody else just paid your light bill, right? Someone has to say, no, I'm not paying your light bill so that you can't go to Vegas or that you can't buy those gym shoes or that you can't do that. And there's sometimes it's not enough of that. We
Absolutely, especially with
rescue.
mothers,
Right.
Especially with
Right.
mothers, because we want our children to have the best. Okay, so let me add this next addendum to that. When you don't know where your joy is and what brings you joy, all you know is stress. You know everything from this middle point of contentment, of sometimes being disconnected, but you know what stress feels like.
Right.
You know you don't want to go there, but you'll do just enough to get to the point where you're content. Whew, right?
Oh,
It's
yeah.
paid for this month. You're at contentment. I don't care how it got paid. It just paid for this month.
Survival mode.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But survival mode is not your joy.
No.
There are so
It's
many
not.
places where we have not even defined our joy. We know what brings us stress. We know what makes us mad, but we don't know what brings us joy. And I say joy and not happiness because happiness is in the moment. Joy is something that is lasting, where you can go back and have that relive that moment, and you can feel the same joy you had. That experience is a deeper experience because it's more meaningful for you.
Right.
When you know your joy, then you have your inspiration. There is the consequences. The consequence of not having your joy is stress and sadness.
And behind that stress comes illness and dis-ease.
All of those things are a result of it. Are consequences, right? So when we have had enough, our enough is enough is enough. When we get to that space, and typically those are some of the things that prompt us getting to those spaces, the consequences, the triggers, and even, you can be provoked into that too.
Yeah.
You can be provoked into change. Oh, I knew you were going to end up in the gutter. I knew you were going to be just like so-and-so. I knew you didn't have it. And you like, oh, you didn't think so? Watch me. Right. And we'll take it there. And that's what we needed for our motivation. We needed somebody to threaten our sense of self and our identity.
Right.
And that's what shifted us to make us move.
And it's interesting that you said that. And no, Dale, that is not what I was answering. Dale just right. Never mind. Anyway, sometimes we are that critic that's saying you're not good enough, you can't do this, you weren't, you're gonna wind up in the gutter, or and you're looking at the trail in your family and you're like, okay, I'm gonna be just like them, or that's what you grew up knowing. And so sometimes you also have to break that thing from yourself, beating yourself up, and you setting that very low standard for yourself.
Yes.
And there was something, as you all were talking, I just had to write this thought down. I got my own little miniature download.
Go. Share.
But it is that when the pain is greater than the pleasure, you will change or you will be changed. And it's up to you on whether you want to be the one to make that change happen and happen the way you want it to, or do you want something or someone else in control of that?
Ooh, that's powerful. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
I'm just running down some scenarios in my head of people just over the last couple of weeks, and I'm like, yeah, right. And in some instances, it's crazy because you would think that this would be enough for someone to say, and in some instances, for whatever reason, and the reasons are going to be different for everybody.
Self-esteem.
That's why and the list could go on, and it's just like, you really want to be in this same situation a year from now? Oh, but you were there a year ago. right? And someone else had to bail you out. So and that's why I think, yeah, the education and the coaching, and yes, I'm a financial strategist and definitely want to work with people. And Heather is a personal change coach. But I think it's the same thing. You have to build that team, right? And so if something's wrong with your car, you're going to see your mechanic. If something is wrong with your heart, you're going to, right? If something is wrong with your finances, you need to go see a financial strategist. If something is wrong just with your life, you need to go see Heather, right? So, but I think, and that's one of those things, especially in our community, that it's like, it's that whole therapy piece. I'm not going to therapy, and it's like, but you need someone to help you get unstuck past where you are better.
Right. And that may not be mom. It may not be your best friend. It may not be your mate or your spouse. It may not be that close to you. Right. You think that people who are closest to you know you best, but oftentimes they're giving you the love, time, and attention based on the love, time, and attention.
And they know you based off that mask that you're wearing too.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
a therapist will absolutely see through all of that, which is what
right.
you want. You want someone who doesn't know you.
Yes.
To take a look at what it is that you're talking about and you're releasing, and to give you an objective point of view and not subjective, which is what we get from people that we know.
Yes.
It's always going to be subjective.
Right.
So.
And that's important. I think part of our masks we're talking about is the fear. The mask, I mean, the if you had to look at it on the inside, the word fear would show up almost every time. And so when we find our courage, I say find our joy. When we find our joy and we layer that with the courage, then that mask automatically starts to dissolve. And people use this term a lot. I want to be authentic. This is my authentic self. Is it? Do you really know what authentic means?
Or what your authentic self really looks like.
What does it really look like? Right. What does it really look like? And I think that's an important piece in where we find our safety and why we keep putting the mask on. And that is going through the course of the day. And I like that Rochelle is always able to offer us some balance in this area, because as we're talking about this, and we're gonna wrap this up with this thought if we can, we talk about the personal safety. It really starts with that, the fear of what will happen to us. What's going to happen to my person? What's going to happen to our families, of course? But it really centers around you first. Where are you most unsafe, like physically? Because if it's one of our basic needs. One of our basic needs is for having a safe place to go, a safe place to belong, right? Those are just two things. But that actual physical place, being safe, is really important. Can you give us a couple of tools to think about around how we can keep physically safe?
Yeah, so, again, it definitely begins with the mindset. Mm-hmm. And you have to have the confidence in yourself to be able to pick out situations that are unsafe or feel unsafe. And a lot of times we ignore our intuition, especially women. Mm-hmm. This is a gift that we have. And we tend to ignore it and think, it's not true, or, you'll be safe, you'll be fine, or whatever. But you absolutely, that intuition is signaling your brain that there's danger ahead. And you have to be prepared for that. And do you want to go ahead, or do you want to go back? Especially if you're in something like a grocery store parking lot or something. Go back inside that store and get someone to escort you to that car. If there's something, a vehicle that's parked nearby that you feel a little unsafe about, don't think you can just hurry up and get in your car and run away.
Oh,
right.
Go and get some help. And so to me, the main thing that we need to do is to recognize what our weaknesses are, our strengths are, and maximize all of that knowledge, because we have that knowledge within us.
Absolutely.
And it's up to us to bring that out and make the best of it.
All right. Crystal.
She said it perfectly. I mean, she was talking about personal safety, but it's the same thing for that financial safety, those strengths and those weaknesses, and you have to uncover what is the thing that's holding you that's holding you back. What does your relationship with your finances, what does that look like, and how do you change it? And a lot of times people don't realize that they can change it, right? This isn't something that's taught, and it not being taught is by design, right? Because if we can keep you in this place, then, we then have control over you. But it's that same thing. Where's the boat leaking? And let's fill the holes, right? Mm-hmm. And then why? It's that retail therapy term that I just dislike so much. It's like, okay, is that really the type of therapy that you need? Right. But why do you need it? Like, what is it that's going to buy those additional things, right? What does that do for you temporarily? Because it didn't fix anything, right? So, just digging in and seeing where those strengths and weaknesses are, and not being afraid to ask for help. And when I say ask for help, I don't mean that you're asking somebody to pay a light bill for you. I mean that you're asking for help to figure out how do you change your situation and turn it around and change the trajectory so that you're going in a positive way. And then you also wind up setting your kids up for success, because if your financial relationship is bad, your children's financial relationship is going to be bad, because they're learning from you.
Absolutely. And as we wrap up today, our takeover for the Women's Safety Net, we want you to, one, starting today, begin to find the components of your own safety net. If you know you have some financial challenges, financial strategists on your team. If you know that you feel unsafe moving around, or you're not quite aware, or you've been a victim of an attack on your personal possessions or your person before, you need a specialist that works in personal protection. You need Rochelle Morton. If you're looking for ways to help figure it out, if you just know that it's something more to your life, more meaning, you have blockages, things that are preventing you from your next step, you need a personal change coach. So you have 3 components of your personal safety net right here. We have other tools and resources, and we'll be back next Monday to share those things with you. We thank our Calvin Mann. We thank our engineer on the scene today, Miles Dixon. Woo-hoo. We thank Podcastic for an opportunity to share these insights with you. We look forward to seeing you next Monday. I am Heather Hedderoo, standing in for Calvin Mann for the takeover for the Women's Safety Net. We wish you all the best of the week and the rest of the day, so we look forward to seeing you soon.